Sipping my coffee here because it's early and I just woke up. All right, everyone, welcome to Masculine Geeks Saturday Morning Cartoon Hour, the return. This is something that TJ, Rob Says, and I did years ago and stopped at least a year ago, maybe longer, wherein we would gather once or twice a month on Saturday, a little earlier. It was usually around 10 o'clock. So TJ was up at 7. And we just hang out and pretty much do it was a little more focused as far as like what we would talk about, but it was basically a continuation of our Wednesday show. But today I'd like to walk down memory lane with cartoons and whatnot that we used to watch as kids, and particularly Saturday morning cartoons. You guys do
Sounds
the typical Saturday morning cartoon, get up early before your parents are up, grab
yeah,
the bowl of cereal, and plunk yourself down in front of the TV?
it's funny. There was a show back when I was growing up. We're talking late '90s called One Saturday Morning, where
Mm,
it would be like from 7 o'clock in the morning to noon of just
really?
back to back episodes. Yeah,
Mm,
you can it.
that's cool.
For a kid, it was cool because the intro for the whole shtick was this very fancy. I don't know. The '90s were very. I kind of compare it to the late '30s where it seemed like we were on the pivotal moment of going somewhere, and then we took different trajectory. If
Oh
that
yeah.
makes sense.
No, it
So
does. Morning, Chris.
you guys can watch it on YouTube if you haven't. And then when I was really young, they had Disney Afternoon where they had like Tailspin.
Oh yeah, yeah. Around like
Yeah,
between 3 and 5 o'clock, right?
yeah. So we would get home from school and like anxiously because this is the thing I didn't think it occurs to me now. Kids today can watch anything they want whenever they want. Back
Streaming,
then,
yeah.
you had to like religiously study the TV guide, be like, oh, I gotta
Yes.
be here at this
You
time,
made you
and
made
I'm like,
like a list and a schedule for yourself, like
Well,
when you're
and
going to
and
be
hope the
home.
TV guide, which was right for what was programmed,
yeah,
that your local affiliates weren't doing some other crap. Because,
Yeah.
just because you're thinking, oh, well, this is the time to watch Star Trek in the afternoon,
The Jerry Lewis telethon.
but instead it's a Cincinnati Reds game.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
They
your
would
local
the Super Bowl would push the programming either completely off by an hour or two or
Mhm.
completely off the schedule.
Well, and local station. I mean, Indianapolis didn't have a major league football or baseball team when I was growing up. I mean, the Colts didn't come here until the '80s.
Mm.
So when they slinked out of Baltimore, um, but so the local WTTV4, which was truly a local station with local programming and stuff like that, they would carry, Cincinnati Reds baseball. So just because you had certain local cartoons or kid shows or something like that that were on at certain times in the afternoon, if there was a Reds game, that ball game would be on instead.
You're
And
out of luck. You're out of luck. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's just kind of how it was. So, but yeah, for me, Saturday mornings, unless there was something specific I was wanting to watch, there were certain years that I did not get up early on Saturday unless I absolutely had to. If I was doing something with a buddy,
Yeah.
if I had work to do, because I'm one of those kids growing up in the 70s that always had some sort of job. So, I mean, if I had to get up at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning because I had to, drive an hour or get driven an hour to some guy's farm to mow 3 or 4 yards worth of property on a tractor or something like that, then that's what I did
yeah,
because, money was precious. And, but, there were certain shows, some of which I thought were on ungodly early. Like the Planet of the Apes cartoon was on briefly
I didn't know there was a
at like
cartoon.
6 o'clock in the morning or some crazy crap like that. And I was staying up late Friday nights because, for one thing, Sammy Terry was on. So that meant, every night from, 10 to midnight or whatever, I had a classic horror movie hosted by probably one of the greatest horror hosts ever
Jocks.
anywhere.
Horror movies, yeah.
And so, I was up late Friday night, and then I'd be listening to, once TV signed off, after Sammy Terry, after local professional wrestling, featuring guys like Bruno Sammartino and Dick the Bruiser and stuff like that. And then maybe a farm report or something like that. The national anthem, the TV signed off.
Yeah.
So I was listening to radio, FM or AM, depending on my age and my mood, because listening to AM, even when FM radio was playing album cuts and really cool things, AM radio stations at night, I could pick up stations out of like Pittsburgh and Chicago and St. Louis and places like that. So, those big, 50,000 watt AM stations were bouncing their signals off the atmosphere. So, pick up all kinds of really cool stuff that you didn't necessarily get to hear locally, and certainly not during the day. So, but yeah, so there are certain things. Thunder the Barbarian from like 1980, 81, that was like much must view TV. Some of the older cartoons that would still get ran on Saturday, like Space Ghost, I enjoyed, but for the most part, a lot of, I enjoyed things like, Shazam, i.e. Captain Marvel, the real Captain Marvel, and Isis and stuff. Those live action shows like that, and Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. Oh God, I enjoyed that show. Being prepubescent, watching the two of them running around in their leotards and stuff like that. Yep. Yeah, that was much view TV. I didn't even need the volume on for that. So, but yeah,
He-Man.
I mean, Deidre Hall. Oh God, yeah, Deidre Hall in the 80s was, very nice. So,
indeed, oh yeah. One of my favorites was the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh yeah,
yep, came on at it's either 10 or 10:30 on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those later shows were fine. It's just I hated when they had stuff I actually wanted to watch, and it was like the first show in the rotation.
6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, no, I didn't get up that. It's funny. I was thinking about that when I woke up to my alarm this morning, which is 10:15, and just kind of laid there. I'm thinking to myself, when I was watching the Saturday morning cartoons, I didn't really have an alarm in my room until I had my own room, and I was going to work. I had to be at work. I just don't recall having an alarm clock when I was a kid.
I didn't have
or even paying attention to the time, just kind of like not waking up with the sun. But because we went to bed relatively early and we were asleep usually before 10 o'clock, we got a good 8 hours sleep and got up around 7, maybe 8 the latest. But I don't remember actually waking up to an alarm clock on Saturday, just getting up.
Like today.
You what?
Yeah.
I had my alarm clock set off, so I would wake up.
I had my alarm set, but I sleep so poorly right now that it didn't matter. I was up early anyway. So
tomorrow.
But the nice thing is I had the dog was there, so he saw I was awake, so he like went from being right beside me to like laying on top of my chest, and it's like, well, I'm not going to go anywhere for a while. I'm just going to sit here and snuggle with the pup. So
dogs are good alarm. Oh, my Mowgli's like that. If he hears me, because I'll sometimes hit the snooze, which I did today. He'll hear the snooze and then meow really loud by my bedroom door and butt his head against it, letting me know, hey, you retard, get up.
Yeah, I want something. Come here, human slave. Serve me.
Pretty much. He didn't want to eat. He just wanted me out and about.
Yeah.
And then when I was walking towards the computer, my laptop here, to turn it on and get ready for today, he leapt at my leg and bit me. I'm like, what? What do you? No, you're not. It's not hard. It's just like one of those possession bites.
Yeah.
It's playful. But I'm like, what are you doing?
Jesus.
Trying to get ready for cartoon hour.
It is so funny knowing you, in your lifestyle, especially your relationships with women and in your dominant role in that relationship.
Hey,
And
Red.
then here's Mowgli making you his bitch.
I know, right?
That cracks me up.
This damn cat. I'll beat him
You
later.
knew he was evil when you got him from the shelter.
I did. It was
right?
actually it was practically on his little card that he was and the guy, I forget his name, was Dave or Dan, who was showing me Mowgli, like
Yeah.
trying to sell him, as it were. Like, we have to sell him already. I read his card. It's cool. He's pretty much like me.
Yeah.
We have a great, I forget who this is that likes to pretend that they're other people. We have one in the chat. I suppose we should consider this a cool thing. But what's up, Red? That's right, your channel. Go ahead, do me a favor, plug your channel. I don't know if you can send the link, or if not, you know what? Let me go ahead and do that for you. Let me go over to, first of all, let me edit our channel. No, not edit. I want to go to the channel first. View on YouTube. And I forget. I have to look at that wiki. We have to check the hour, not the hour, the day when. Oh, there you go. You can check out Red's new channel. Red Sings the Blues. He's got a good cartoon, talking about cartoons and popular culture. It's really cool. Most of his stuff isn't longer than I think 10 minutes, which is really cool. You can sit there and be entertained and get some information and go about your day. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I hear the shorts do really well as far as engagement.
They do, yeah, absolutely. Let's go to there's my edit video. Editing the background on the fly here. Let's open up the details, customization, participation mode, subscribers. I like putting subscribers only mode on, and let's do that for 20 minutes. And let's save that. Let's go over to here. Turn that on. Save that. There we go. Cool. All right. Go back over to the channel itself. Let's take a look at that. Sure it works.
Enjoy all of our Vince's technical work.
Yes. Ridiculous. All right, let's go over here. Block that out.
Although it's kind of nice that the impersonators decided to take the time to get up early to hang out with us for a little bit.
I know, right? Did you impersonators watch cartoons as you were a kid? If you're going to be in here talking crap, you might as well contribute meaningfully to the conversation.
Yeah. Are they just waiting for Rule 0 to get started so they can go like?
Well, that's it. We're getting all the pre-Rule 0 tards.
Who are these people?
I have no idea. I know Zachary Moore is he's a real dude. Any cartoon or a specific era?
I mean, I grew up on everything. I grew up watching, Cartoon Network stuff from, Looney Tunes. They used to play old stuff, and I don't know who knows what kids watch now. Kids these days, they don't know.
Get off my internet lawn.
Well, I know what mine watches. He just earlier in the week we were flipping through something, and I saw that they had a Popeye episodes on. I flipped to that, and it was an old Max Fleischer Popeye episode from the 1940s. So it was during the war, or the build up to the war, because Popeye and Bluto were competing against each other to build Navy ships.
Oh
The
yeah,
war
I
effort.
remember that.
And so I put it on that, and my son, my youngest, just who's in single digits, just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And when over the summer, he and I went to see The Last Unicorn was playing at a I say local theater. It's in Franklin, Indiana, the Art Craft Theater, which is an old theater that in a small town here in Indiana, but they actually run things on 35 millimeter print. And so it was one of their summer movies. And so I took him to see that. And now they always start any of their features with a cartoon in front of it. And the one that they picked for this was an old Warner Brothers featuring an owl that was named Al Jolson. So it was like this kind of play on the jazz singer.
Yeah.
So he like interviewed for a radio show, and it was hosted by Jack Bunny. And so there are all these things, and it's the episode of the cartoon where he's like, I love to sing about the moon and the June and the spring. I love to sing, and his parents are these German immigrants that are
Al
like,
Jolson?
Yeah,
Al Jolson.
Al Jolson.
OWL.
Yeah. And so all of that was really, really cool. And he absolutely loved it. And of course, he's not getting, any of these references. And I'm just lucky that Vince and I are lucky in that in growing up in the 70s, by accident, we were exposed to stuff from like the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, just because of either older relatives or things that were still floating around on TV, because there was only so much material to show. So just almost by accident and osmosis, you end up picking up all these cultural references that are like decades earlier than you are, and they just kind of are in the back of your head. And of course, so I see this stuff now, and it's like, yeah, I know what all this stuff is. But he has none of that exposure, because everything now, there is so much, and a lot of that older stuff just isn't shown regularly, or you really have to go looking for it.
It's been edited.
Yeah. And well, and even like the stuff pisses me off in the afternoon, Nickelodeon or one of the other channels, if they're showing like episodes of Gunsmoke or Bonanza or one of the old westerns, they always have at the start of the show, some kind of like warning that this is from an earlier time with different morals or opinions or points of view or whatever. And I'm like, anyone watching an episode of Gunsmoke at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock on a weekday, yeah, they're not going to be offended, because
they don't care.
I don't see a 300-pound purple-haired lesbian sitting there on the couch in the afternoon watching that when she could be watching, The View or, one of those other shows. If not having her weekly or daily conversation with Big Brother. So yeah, that kind of stuff cracks me up. But yeah, there are certain cartoons they just do not show anymore, will not show anymore. And some of them, I think I've heard, you can't even like buy them on any kind of home video unless it's a home video format.
We've talked about this
released before, like 20 years ago.
You get that on eBay or something, or an auction, or like somebody's antique show, or just an estate sale. I've been to a few of those lately to try to get old VHS tapes and old DVDs from that era. But I remember we talked about our introduction to classical music, and mine was through the Warner Brother cartoons. Warner Brother cartoons.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Bugs Bunny and even to some extent Tom and Jerry.
That was the first place I had heard it. The second place would have been in the small towns in Indiana where my grandparents lived, my great grandparents, my uncle, there was an older lady that I would occasionally go and visit, and she would play classical music for me. So when I was talking about like the Lone Ranger theme one time, she's like, "Oh, you mean the William Tell Overture?" And she went and grabbed, may have even have been a 78, and put it on a phonograph and started playing it. And so that was my secondary. But I heard all the classical music that I had heard on Warner Brothers cartoons first, because that, those were just ubiquitous in the 1970s. Every kid show had some format where they were doing that, whether they were hosted by someone like Cowboy Bob or Jamie, or if, to name a couple of the local hosts, or they were just on TV, that there was like, Bugs Bunny cartoons on for an hour at such and such a time on such
Mighty Mouse in the morning.
Yeah.
Yep. Before I went to it was Mighty Mouse and Gumby before I went to kindergarten. Pokey, Gumby.
Yeah,
some of those, especially the ones with the monsters that would chase Gumby and Pokey, they actually frightened me as a kid, like, because it was very dark, and the way the stop motion animation was done was very very sinister to me.
Yeah, for most of, I guess, elementary school and stuff, that if the TV was on in the morning before I went to school, they seem to be playing older, like Hanna-Barbera, like Tom and Jerry and stuff like that. Which I got, one of my sons is a big fan of Tom and Jerry. He grew up watching all those old 1930s and 40s Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Oh, nice.
And would have discussions with me about how Tom and Jerry cartoons got kind of surreal, and like the ones that were done in like the 1950s and 60s. And
they did, they had like somebody was smoking, dropping some acid and smoking weed or something.
Well, those, I guess, were made in Europe instead of produced. Yeah. So if you actually go and read about when batches were made, you have like the classic ones that were made in Hollywood
in the 40s
by the big studios. Yeah. In the 30s and 40s. With all their top talent animation. And those are the ones that are just, the colors are so vivid and the detail is so rich, and it's just, there's so immersive, and there's so much warmth and so much going on there. And then when you get to like the 50s or 60s,
they're flatter.
This kind of, they're flatter and stuff like that. And those were all done in Europe, apparently. And or at least produced by a company that was in Europe. It's kind of weird. How
definitely
that
a stylistic difference. That's for
sure. And that has that kind of weird. I don't know if Art Nouveau is the right way of putting it, but that weird art style from like the postmodern or modern art from like the 1950s and 60s and stuff. And then, but anyway, so. Yeah, that the old Hanna-Barbera, so Tom and Jerry, Droopy.
Oh, I forgot
those
about
kind
Droopy
of things. Yeah. And occasionally things like Woody Woodpecker and stuff like that. I remember Woody Woodpecker mostly from the afternoons, and I love those old Woody Woodpecker cartoons. Those I thought were hysterical. And then another afternoon one was like Bullwinkle and Mr. Peabody,
Rocky and Bullwinkle,
those
Sherman and what's his face?
Yeah. So those things, Sherman and Mr. Peabody, those
Mr. Peabody,
those, and Wacky History or something like that, or Fractured Fairy Tales. So those kind of things I always thought were really, really cool. And then right around 1977 or so, that there was kind of a shift, because I can remember Battle of the Planets being on like 3:00 in the afternoon after school, which was one of the two Americanized versions of Science Ninja Team Gatchaman from Japan, which came out earlier in the 70s in Japan, which I love Gatchaman. That's just,
That's
such
up
a
there
fun
with Star
show.
Blazers and Speed Racer and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, in the early mid '80s, they started showing Robotech, which was
Robotech. Yep.
the Macross, Southern Cross, and Genesis
1985.
Climber
Yeah.
Mospeada. So, and those were on like in the morning before going to high school. So
Yeah,
I
they were
watched.
on at they were on at 3:30 in the afternoon during high school.
Oh, for you? Yeah,
which
for
is
me,
kind
they
of
were
cool.
on it at like 7 o'clock in the morning or something like that for high school. Which by
I
the
didn't
time I
really
was
know.
getting
I
into
didn't
high
really know
school, I
about it.
didn't.
A friend of mine introduced me to it. He's like, "Oh, yeah,
Oh,
check
really?
out Robotech." I'm like, what the hell is that?"
What the hell is
So
Robotech?
that was
Yeah.
Robotech, and I'm like, "Wow, this is really cool." I mean, I go
Yeah.
back and watch them now, and they don't. The only one for me that really holds up is the
Mhm.
third one,
Genesis Climber
third series
Mospeada. Yeah.
with Rand and Scott with
Mhm.
in the post-apocalyptic, as it were, the Invid of
Yeah.
taking over the Earth. That one,
Yeah.
to me, that one holds up. The other ones are they're more goofy.
Yeah. Well, I had always had a problem. See, by the time that kind of stuff started happening in high school, I was already familiar with Japanese cartoons in like their original form.
Oh, okay.
So I love Macross in Japanese.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
cool.
care for Macross as much as Robotech. And I know like Rollo absolutely disagrees with that. He prefers Robotech over the others, if I remember right. I think I had him say that one time, and I'm like, really? And but Genesis Climber Mospeada unfortunately wasn't even super popular in Japan, and it's because it was on like early Sunday mornings in Japan. So it was in a
Really?
like dead zone time
It's a
slot.
weird
So it
time
couldn't,
slot, yeah.
yeah. So it was like, the one day in Japan where
Be
families are
right back.
doing stuff or kids might actually be sleeping. And that's when it aired. So it wasn't super, super popular there. Obviously, it has a following, and then Southern Cross, I never really got as into, although I do have a couple of character model kits from Southern Cross, which was the middle section of Robotech. But of course, by the time TJ was watching TV in the 90s, there were actually Japanese cartoons on TV that you knew were Japanese cartoons, just on Adult Swim or whatever.
So funny story. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Mm-hmm.
came out. The cartoon came out when I was a kid.
Right.
And my dad did not want me watching that stuff because he thought it was all a Japanese conspiracy to make American kids lazy. And so every single morning after my dad went to work, I go over to my mom and say, "Can I watch it?" She goes, "This one time, yeah."
Uh-huh.
And I'd watch, or go into the living room, and I'd watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then the next day I'd get up and say, "Can I watch it this time?" And just every single day it was the same thing.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I hardly remember any of that, like the actual cartoon. I just remember getting up and asking. And then I remember one time, we were playing video games. My dad made a comment about the Japanese conspiracy stuff. And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Watch the end credits." And then, of course, it's all these Japanese people, like Nintendo was Japan. I mean, that was the late 80s, early 90s was really what like Japan's like rise to power economically.
Well, before the Japanese economic bubble burst.
Yeah. I don't think they've recovered from that ever.
Well, yeah, that's a very lengthy topic of conversation, but yeah, it's kind of weird. Right now, as bad as our economy is, buying stuff from Japan, if you're buying directly from Japan, the yen dollar rate is such that it's nice seeing something that's like, 30,000 yen or whatever than that, and you're thinking, oh, that's going to be like $300 or something. It's like, nah, it's two something. It's just because the yen is so weak against the dollar at the moment. But yeah, I remember I was at Mid-Ohio-Con the weekend before Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles aired for the first time on Monday.
That's cool.
On American TV. So, and two of the guests at Mid-Ohio-Con that year were Eastman and Laird, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird,
writers,
the creators of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So they're there at the convention, and they've got on their table, running on a loop, the opening animation for this brand new cartoon series called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And they also had these Polaroids of the four turtles and April and like Shredder and something else. So the original action figures, they had Polaroids sitting on their table. So I got them to autograph all my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle issues, including the first two trade paperbacks for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I saw that there was the show, and then that Monday the cartoon series aired. But what was nice is Kevin Eastman signed my first trade, and then I stepped over to Peter Laird because there were a few people in line because they were still pretty popular at the time, but it wasn't outrageous. The guys who had outrageous lines were like John Byrne was a guest that year, and he had done his run on X-Men, which was super popular, and now he was working for DC doing the relaunch of Superman, which was like earth-shattering in the comic industry at the time. As it seemed. So he had huge lines of people to autograph books for. But so I stepped over to Peter Laird, and he autographed my turtle trade, and then drew a little turtle sketch in it in volume 1. And he saw I had volume 2 in my hand, and he's like, "You want me to autograph that too?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but I mean, I can come back." And he's like, "No, it's fine. I've got time." So he's autographed volume 2 and did another turtle sketch in it. And then I got back over in front of Peter or Kevin Eastman and gave him my volume 2, and he opened it up to do his signature in it, and he saw that there was a turtle sketch in it, and he looked
not
over
to be
at Peter,
outdone,
and he's like, "I draw turtles," and so he autographed it and drew a sketch in that too. So my volume 1 has autographs from Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird with the Laird turtle. My volume 2 has autographs by Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, and a sketch from each one of them. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's good memory.
Yeah.
Now, when was this?
Probably 1989, 89. Yeah.
Okay.
Right around that area. So John Byrne autographed all his complete run of X-Men that I had. So I got all those autographed by him. Mike Grell autographed all of his huge chunk of John Sable Freelance, which is something new he was doing. Green Arrow, Longbow Hunters, which was a big mini series that he had done, and a bunch of old Warlord comics that he had done. Byrne also, besides autographing my X-Men books, all of the Superman issues he had done up to that point, as well as Space 1999 that he'd done for like Charlton back in the 70s, which was like one of his first press. That was the very last thing I had him signed. He was an arrogant, kind of an SOB at the convention.
Really?
Oh yeah. At least compared to everyone else, he was. And admittedly, he was like super, super popular at that time. So I could see how that could go to his head. That was the last thing I had him sign for me. And it was under a stack of the last of my like Supermans for him to sign. And when he got to those, he like stopped, put his pen down, paged through it, touching them very gently as if it were, a contaminated. Yeah. No, not reverential, contaminated.
Oh,
He's
contaminated?
Like, where did you get these? And it's like, well, I work at a comic shop. So, and plus, I like Space 1999. So I've had these in my collection. And he's like, oh, and he signed it because he just was ashamed of his artwork in it because it was like his first thing. Yeah. He was honestly embarrassed by it. And it was just kind of cool to see that toward the end of the convention, I kind of burst his bubble a little bit and let a little air out of his sails. So I kind of took a little bit of pleasure out of that. Now, sitting right next to him, who was also doing a run on Superman. He was doing Adventures of Superman. Was
Okay.
Jerry Ordway, who
Oh.
I think is a better Superman artist than John Byrne. And he was the absolute nicest guy, great to talk to, autographed all of everything I had for him to sign. And the other thing that's cool, especially since Captain Marvel is featured on our backdrop, what they call Shazam because of the whole name issue, but Shazam's the wizard. Captain Marvel's the guy in the red tights known as the Big Red Cheese. Jerry Ordway, when DC finally relaunched after basically driving the original owners of Captain Marvel out of business, because Captain Marvel's sales at one point in time eclipsed Superman's, and he was a more popular character, which doesn't surprise me at all because he's more uniquely his own character, whereas Superman is more uniquely Doc Savage and Moses. But anyway, the CC Beck, who's like one of the original artists for Captain Marvel, said in an interview, the only person that can draw Captain Marvel correctly besides me is Jerry Ordway. And I would agree with that because Ordway does a great version of Captain Marvel, of that character. But yeah, and I always like Captain Marvel better than Superman. And in fact, I like Captain Marvel Jr. the best, who was also Elvis Presley's favorite comic book character.
Really?
Well, that's where the short cape, that's the same cape Elvis that Captain Marvel's wearing in that picture. That's basically the same cape Elvis wore on stage in Vegas with the collars and everything else. And if you look at Elvis's hairstyle is taken from Captain Marvel Jr. And the lightning bolt that Elvis used is the lightning bolt from Captain Marvel. And
wow,
TCB,
he was a huge Elvis was a huge geek.
Yeah, Elvis was, well, yeah.
More ways than one.
Well, and supposedly, and I don't know if they rotate these out or if they're still on display. At one point in time at Graceland, in one of the display cases, like in the Jungle Room or something like that, were some of his old comic books, and they're old Captain Marvel Jr. Wiz comic books. So
oh wow.
Yeah. So I mean that's his thing. He was a dirt poor, geeky, nerdy kid who got real rich, got real famous, could have anything he wanted, and people didn't tell him no. And he made himself Captain Marvel.
That's awesome. I like that. That's cool.
I mean, that would, that would be no different than one of us, like, getting super famous, and whenever we went anywhere, we were dressed as, Doc Savage and those what jumper pants or whatever with the boots up to the knee and the shirt and
the jodhpur pants.
Yeah. Stuff like that, or dressing up as like the Shadow. Everywhere we went, we had, a scarf and a big hat on, and because, we're celebrities, who's going to tell us no?
That's right. You can, there's a certain amount of leeway public judgment has for people who have a lot of money and are already famous.
Yes.
It's like, okay, well, you're eccentric, you're fine. If a no name does it, well,
what a geek.
That person might be in a bell tower sniping people sometime soon. Got to watch him.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's it's weird if I have my collection as is, but if I'm on YouTube smoking a cigar in front of my Bugatti telling you to sleep with trainees that look like Megan Fox, well,
what?
Pop G, it's it's just weird how is this is absolutely no different than any other guy. Instead of putting my money into cars, I put my money into other things.
Oh yeah.
It just, and the thing is, if I could have any car I wanted right now, it's like pick a car, you could have it. As much as like a Shelby Cobra or something like that would be really, really tempting. The car I legitimately, honestly would want and it's one I've actually looked at in the last year or so of tracking down and buying one, is a 1970 Pontiac Firebird.
Oh, nice.
Because that was my first car. My first car was a
Okay.
1970 Pontiac Firebird with a 350 in it. It was an automatic. I wouldn't necessarily need the 350 in it. I could do a 440 or 420, I think was the other one that they had. And I could do a manual transmission because I actually know how to drive, which means knowing how to drive.
It's nice
manual clutch.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice having that that skill. It also translates over when you're learning how to ride a motorcycle.
And it makes your car more difficult to steal sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
all these young idiots stealing cars don't know how to drive. You know, I can't get it to move.
Right? You're gonna pop that clutch. I had to do that many times when my one of my ex-girlfriends in the 90s, she had a candy apple red Volkswagen Beetle.
Oh, okay.
And there's several times we were coming out of the diner from dinner or lunch, and it just would not. I had to pop the clutch to get it to start.
Yeah,
yeah.
I had a friend that always like parked on like kind of an incline so that he could have, you know, so he could do that just in case.
Exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, that's what I would have. I would have a 1970 Firebird because that was my first car, and I wouldn't mind that being like my last car for the rest of my life, you know.
Okay, cool. And this is something seriously that you're looking into.
I'm in this looking at process as far as, you know, what are the price ranges for these now, and you know, because if I bought one, I would want to just pay for it. I'm not getting a loan or anything like that. And I'm also like looking at things in my collection. It's like, what would I be willing to part with? Just because my sons, while they like a lot of the same stuff I do, they do not have my passion for stuff to the same level that I do. A couple of my sons more so than the other two, but you know, there are certain things that I think each of my son would want. Like I've got some autographed like rock stuff, albums and things like that I know one of my sons would definitely be interested in. I've got certain toys and certain games that I know various sons would be interested in. But as far as dividing my hoard into like 4 separate piles and saying, here you go, guys, some of my sons are like, even having a fourth of my collection would be overwhelming. They just
so you're thinking of rather than
you're
thinking rather than leaving it to them, not having the passion that you do, then actually maybe selling some of it off and then using that money for the Firebird.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
That makes sense.
Because that
you're
way
still putting
I'm
something back into your own passion.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, you know, that doesn't mess with, you know, the money I'm putting away to, you know, to retire and stuff like that, because that's still something that's looming on the horizon, that there are certain days I want that to come sooner than later. I'm getting well, I mean, obviously it's a little bit different for TJ. TJ still has time and he's working on stuff. Well, I mean, but you're working on stuff like that. But I mean, Vince and I are both at the point where, whether we like it or not, realistically, we've got, you know, medical science, miracle discoveries aside, like we'd have access to them.
Maybe 30 years.
Yeah. We probably have more life behind us than what we've got in front of us.
Yeah.
So I think Vince and I are both of the mind that we would like to enjoy what we've got going forward, and you know, so
correct, absolutely. But
and working for someone else and making someone else money, or, you know, helping someone else from making stupid decisions, if they're not family, that's at a certain point, that's just not my job, and you can't pay me enough to put up with your stuff or deal with your stupidity. You know,
exactly. Yeah, when you're it depends on what you know. I love my fortunately I love my job,
right?
And it's not the idiocy level is nowhere near what you're dealing with. So I'm still okay for another 10 or so years.
Yeah.
I don't mind. And I still have really good vacation time, and
Right.
I've
And
got
you end up
like
meeting cool people.
and I
Like
meet cool
the guys
people.
from the Leaf Cutters that
Oh yeah,
that you'd
the
met and
yeah,
stuff like that.
Zach and
Zach.
Andy
Yeah.
and to some extent Ben. Those guys. So I was taking our semantic antivirus server, our
Mhm.
hosted semantic, and moving it over to Trend Micro Apex One.
Mhm.
And Andy and now Scott, do name Scott, but Andy and Zach were on the third party contractor list to help me do that.
Right.
And I'm how I am here is how I am at work,
Mhm.
especially behind the closed server room doors.
Right.
So I not politically correct, and I wanted to gauge these guys as far as like, let's see what kind of guys these are, because they seem pretty cool.
Mhm.
And I would say certain things, and they're like, oh, and they would fire back. So now it's just like we're friends,
Yeah.
and once a month, during work, maybe between 3 and 4 o'clock, we do this, but on a Teams meeting.
Right.
So now we're friends, and they all
Mhm.
live out. They're all down south in Louisiana somewhere. But yeah, exactly. I met some cool dudes at work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not. I don't have that level of frustration. I think if I did, I'd be seriously looking at something else. But fortunately, I'm not, and
Mhm.
that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I'm closer to retirement than not. That's for
Yeah.
sure. But
And the thing is, knowing you, part of that free time from not having to work would just be time you spent writing more,
yeah, well,
amongst
absolutely,
other
yeah.
things that you would be doing. But I mean, obviously, I see you writing more in the future as long as you're capable of taking pen to paper,
Absolutely, yeah. That is something I want to devote more time to, because the 9 to 5 does cut into the writing and other
Mhm.
things, and then I have other endeavors that I'm doing that
Right.
I sometimes marvel at where I find the time.
Mhm.
There's so many things on the list to do.
Between
It's
wine,
gotten to the
women, and
point.
song.
Yeah, you have to fit in wine, women, and song. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's everything else. Not to put too much importance or focus on that, but that is an integral part of being a healthy man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Now, of
So
course, TJ, are you still writing for a living as far as
Yeah.
various publications, internet and
Um,
otherwise?
the nation's last legitimate journalist.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
I'm an investigative reporter.
Yeah. So,
That's
but I
cool.
mean, you're writing for a living. So, I mean, that's beyond just the writing you do fiction wise.
Yeah.
So,
That's the only way. I do some contract writing for a think tank, and
Mm.
I make more money in a month or 2 months than I make from writing my novels. That's kind of like it's a hobby right now.
Mhm.
One day it may change, but for right now, it's fiction writing is kind of just it's been a hobby. It's been a 20-year hobby basically.
Yeah.
But
Likewise.
who knows what's going to happen? I'll write that one book or short story or whatever that's going to
Explode.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. The things have changed so much in the last how many years. So,
Is it even possible for a Harry Potter like phenomenon to even happen again in publishing?
it was funny. I was at a conference. We're talking a lot. Like, God, I feel so old now, and I know I'm talking to you guys, but like, this was back in this was 12 years ago. I was at a conference, and all they talked about was Potter and Twilight. Like they were it was a publishers conference, and what they were looking for was the next Harry Potter or Twilight.
Right.
And the problem is, and I remember talking to one of the publishers, and I was talking about my book, and he goes, "Look, man, here's your problem. You're a man writing about men,
Yep.
and men just are not reading books or buying books." So,
No.
like, oh, that's a problem.
Which, of course, I find funny when I look around my room, which is like completely filled with books. Behind all the toys are books. And that's just one room of the house that's filled with books. Now, admittedly, though, fiction wise, there are certain authors who are still producing fiction that I buy.
Yeah.
One being Bernard Cornwell, who writes historic fiction primarily. So if he writes and publishes something new, I'm going to buy it. That's just kind of a given. Most everything else book wise I've been buying lately, and I buy a lot of books, are history books, legit, nonfiction history books. And
Pre
most of
1980.
well, some of the new books I'm buying because they're from authors whose work and whose academic credentials I respect and trust the results.
Yeah.
But some of them are just, are definitely books that are older, that were published, decades ago in some cases. But a lot of it, and most of it lately, has been dealing with the British Army. Bernard Cornwell is still alive.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. That name sounded familiar.
Yeah. The Sharps books, Starbuck Chronicles, Uhtred of Bebbanburg.
Did you ever watch the Sharp TV show with Sean Bean?
Yes, I did.
I've only seen clips of it.
I've watched it. I enjoyed it. I wish it had a bigger budget.
Yeah.
Because it's like doing mass battles with like your 10 army men, your 10 G.I. Joe figures that you have, and you're doing this epic, World War III battle, but you only have the 10 figures. So that I think it suffers from, and some of the changes they made from the source material I didn't care for, but anyway, so yeah, I've been reading a lot of, especially Napoleonic books about Waterloo and the Peninsula Campaign, and also a lot of books about the Anglo-Zulu War and some of the other stuff tied around it. So
yeah, it's interesting.
I see. My dad read a lot of Bernard Cornwell. That was a typo. So I get what you're saying now, Chris. Yeah, Bernard Cornwell is still alive, but unfortunately your dad is. So my condolences on that. My dad is also passed. So is my biological father. Sadly, I did not know my biological father very well, but other than he served in the Navy on the Yorktown, I have his cruise patch from that. From 1966, I do believe.
Oh, yeah, Yorktown.
Yeah, Yorktown number 2, not Yorktown number 1. Which is a shame. Well, he would have been very old if he had served on that Yorktown.
Yeah.
That Yorktown was one tough ship. Considering it had been damaged before the Battle of Midway, hastily repaired. I think it was like they did like a month's worth of dry dock. Well, it needed like a couple months in dry dock to fix everything, but they did like a month's worth of work in like 48 hours or something crazy, and we're still working on the ship as it was steaming out to its position during the Battle of Midway. It takes 2 attacks from the Japanese at Midway. The first attack, the Japanese come back saying they got one of their carriers, having missed the Enterprise and Wasp, I believe. And then the second wave of bombers strike the Yorktown again, thinking it's a different carrier. And it's like, oh, we've sunk 2 American carriers. And the Yorktown, despite the damage and despite having, the crew leave it, still is floating and will not sink. And it finally gets sunk by a Japanese sub.
Yeah.
On the way back to Pearl. And it's like, that was one tough ship. She was not going down easy. And by virtue of her being attacked twice, it saved damage on the Enterprise and Wasp. So the Big E gets to become this legendary ship. And then the ship that they were laying down and building and almost completed around the time of the Battle of Midway was the carrier I think they were going to call it the Bonhomme Richard or something like that. I believe they were giving it like a classic name. And because of the Yorktown's prowess and everything she'd done thus far in the Second World War, they decided to rename her. So CV-10, I believe, ended up being renamed and commissioned as the USS Yorktown. So,
Hey, Bubba.
and that's the one my father would have served
Oh.
on. So, anyway.
Cool. All right, gentlemen. This is the cartoon hour, and we are 3 minutes from the hour. So unless we have some questions from the chat, we're going to call it because it is Saturday and we have things we wish to do.
I got.
I don't want to get back out on the bike. You want to what?
I got a tabletop game in an hour, so.
Oh, the Thule Wars?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
You're still enjoying that?
Yeah. It's fun.
Cool.
Is the game fun, or is it you've also got the game's fun, but you've also got the right group of people you're playing with?
Combination of both, but it's a fun game.
Good.
Cool. That's when you get the perfect confluence of events. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you've got the right group of guys you're gaming with, you can play a crap game and still have fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you can have an amazing game, and if you're playing with a bunch of spurds and targs, it is just I can't do this. I would rather not game than play with these people. So
yeah, my D&D tabletop game crew that I DM once a month when we can. Sometimes things get in the way, but ostensibly once a month. I've known them since 2007.
Mm-hmm.
We've been gaming on and off. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I post some photos on Instagram here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely. We always here at MG advocate meeting up in real life and doing stuff with your buddies.
Yeah, which is something Vince is working on behind the scenes for all of us coming this summer as well.
Correct.
So,
yes.
So you may be seeing us gaming live all together in one place.
Yes,
at some point in the future. So
that's the plan, and I want to make sure that happens this year. I know we've been talking about it on and off. It's finally we just have to steam ahead and just do it.
God,
so
it was so much easier scheduling games in junior high.
Well, yeah, you didn't have everything else, right? You just you call your buddy up. If they're not working at a job, well, chances are they probably weren't in the school years.
Mm-hmm.
You could schedule a game. Like when I was in high school and a little bit afterwards, almost every Friday night.
Oh yeah, I mean,
a couple hours.
How we were gaming in school. There was a glorious time there in the early '80s where, and it's when Jeff Brother talks about 1-to-1 time, that was easy as hell to do when you were in junior high, especially there in the early '80s, because we were playing all the time. I mean, we were writing notes to each other. We were doing different things with our characters behind the scenes and in our downtime as far as training or researching or whatever based on what character class you had. We were constantly working on new places to explore in our game setting. And I mean, I'd go home from school and call a buddy of mine, and he'd run a solo adventure for me over the phone. And then Friday night, we would be playing, and all of us would be playing. But my primary group consisted of guys all on the west side of Indianapolis and a group of guys on the east side of Indianapolis. And that was like the group because the one of the guys on the east side was a cousin of one of the guys on the west side, and that's how our groups kind of merged together and our setting kind of merged together. And so I would be gaming on the phone with one of the guys on the east side who was one of our primary DMs, and then come the weekend, Friday, Saturday night, our groups were getting together gaming locally, so we had 2 games going on. And then we were comparing notes about stuff that happened at each other's games to different groups of characters. And then there were times that I was going over to the east side and gaming with those guys. And then one of the guys over there became one of my best friends. And so, like spring break, his family would go camping, and I got to be his, like, you can bring one of your friends
And
to
you're
go
one of the
camping.
friends that went, yeah.
And I was the one friend that went. One year he got to take two of us, but so one of his friends from the East Side and me, we were all doing that, and so the three of us were gaming that whole week out in the campgrounds. But so yeah, but I
Cool.
mean, it was great. The game was always going. In the
It was nonstop. It was a living, breathing world for us.
Oh yeah, and so
Yeah.
I don't know that any modern gamers even those who would have been 10, 11, 12, 13 now, if they do that. I mean, I don't talk to a lot of 13-year-old kids that aren't related to me. So
Probably not. Mike, I'm sure it's out there, but my guess is that's too much like work.
Yeah.
For them, and in this age of I want it yesterday.
Yeah.
I doubt it's happening. So
well, I mean, would be the equivalent of that the guys that were, and I don't know that they even play Warcraft like they used to, but the guys playing Warcraft every afternoon after school. I mean, would that be as close to that as there is?
Maybe, but the work is still done by the PC.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not all the timekeeping, all the notes in the world building and all the other stuff. I mean, that it's easy just to come home from school and plunk yourself down in front of a screen, turn it on, log in, and away you go.
Right.
There's no pen and paper. There's no actually thinking about stuff. There's no calling someone on the phone. There's no timekeeping. It just doesn't. The attention to the world is there, but the actual work behind it is not. It's all done by the computer.
I mean, we were writing notes to each other in like Dwarven runes, so that if a teacher stole one of the notes at school, she'd have no idea what the hell we were talking about.
Exactly.
Because it was literally in Dwarven runes. Unless you had one of the old copies of the Lord of the Rings, that had like the Elven script in the back and the Dwarven runes and then all the little notes and stuff, you couldn't break the code.
No.
It's so true. But I mean, and that took effort to learn Dwarvish runes and taking the time to write it down on parchment and everything else.
Case in point, the smug.
Yeah.
Has Tolkien's Elvish. This was made by my main girl. She made this, and this she researched the Elvish, and this says Vince's mug or Vincent's mug. So yeah.
Is that the one that bakes?
That is the one that bakes, sews. I sent her to pottery class to do this stuff. She does crochet. She's into fountain pens.
Like, yeah.
Complete, that one. It puts
I've seen her ass. It's nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've seen you spanking it. Is what I've seen.
Exactly. So she's into fountain pens so much. I mean, she knows her shit with fountain pens.
Yeah.
There's a huge collection of fountain pens. Antiques.
I gotta head out, guys.
Yeah, we're gonna TJ. We're getting ready to go too. So
we're getting ready to call it. So have a good game.
Right.
Aw.
See you Wednesday.
Indeed. Yeah, for a miniature talk, that'll be fun. But she's into a lot of stuff. I've even inspired her to start her own cookbook. She's about 3/4 away for that. I've given her a deadline to finish that to make sure she's on track.
Good.
So she does that. She still writes letters. She writes a letter to me once or twice a week, postcards, all kinds of fun stuff. So I'm keeping her as girl number one for a while. What I call main girl.
Well, it definitely sounds like she brings something pleasant to your existence. So that's
oh yeah,
kind of
I don't. Well, that's it. I mean, it's something Zen always said. Zen parent, you have to, what do you want, and figure out what you want, and then design your life in that direction. And I really, when I read that book, I really took that to heart. Not that I wasn't doing that before, but that kind of solidified certain things with me. I'm like, I'm going to do that in all aspects of my life. And some guys may say, well, Vince, aren't you missing out on fill in the blank? Yeah, I don't care. I'm going to be 54 on Monday. I want things my way. That's just how it is. And if somebody doesn't want to play that way, that's fine. I'm
Mhm.
not coercing them. There's the door.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah. No,
So
I completely get that. Sometimes you have things that are kind of in your head or in your soul that you will read someone else's words and you see whatever it is you've conceptualized, narrated, orated, written down, and it goes from being conception in the back of your head to being more solidified that yes, this is it. This is what I'm doing. This is what I this is it, you
this
know.
resonates with me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
To use a woo-woo word, as it were. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So I get that.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this the return to the Saturday morning cartoon hour. We'll see how long we keep these going, because these kind of get in the way of a lot of Saturday plans, and I don't want to interrupt those precious Saturdays that we have. So for now, it's only once a month, and we'll see how far we go with this. Kind of depends on the chat and the reception we get from it, as far as like watches and how well it's received.
Yeah, so but we appreciate seeing so many regulars, especially Blake and
And
Chris and
Chris
everybody. So it's
and seeing Red Sings the Blues stop in, and Zachary
yeah,
Moore, haven't seen his
who
guys
I'm
in a while.
unfamiliar with, so I'll have to check that out. So
Oh yeah, he used to do sort of a men's kind of a red pillish kind of thing.
hmm
And what was that called? I think it was just called Red Sings the Blues. And
hmm
then I guess about a little less, or maybe about a year ago,
hmm
he decided, yeah, I want to do this other thing. It's putting out some short form videos on popular culture and cartoons and
hmm
Japanese animation and all kinds of stuff. You would actually like it, Robert.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I
I'll have to
did
check
put
it out.
his. Did you? Yeah, you got the.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, Stagehands In. Yeah, go
Mhm.
check out Red Sings the Blues YouTube at Stagehands In. It's really good. I like it.
Mhm.
So, all right, everyone. Enjoy. Anyone who's listening to this later, who's made it this far, we appreciate it as always. And this Wednesday coming up, we're going to be Robert and TJ and I are going to be talking about miniature wargaming, and we'll include some history and backstory of Peter, the old actor Peter Cushing, who
Mhm.
played Grand Moff Tarkin. I wonder what it takes to become a Grand Moff. Anyway, Grand Moff
Yeah.
Tarkin in Star Wars, and a few other things, and then they CGI'd him in one of the later ones, from what I hear. So, anyway, you too, Blake. Always a pleasure as well. And TJ's not here to take us out, so we're just going to go ahead and cue up our music, and enjoy the rest of your weekends, and we'll see you on Wednesday.